So, if you haven't heard yet, I'm pretty sure that you'll have heard by this time tomorrow. The shit is hitting the fan over there in the Middle East right now. And what happened is that Iran has struck Israel. That is to say, they have retaliated against Israel by sending over a large number of rockets and drones and missiles. Now, this is a retaliatory strike because Israel actually struck at Iran first. If you remember, on April 1st of this month, they struck the Iranian consulate in Syria, which is basically like striking on Iranian soil, is what that is. And that's generally not a good thing. There's very few rules in actual war, but attacking the ambassadors and consulates of your enemy in other countries is one of those rules. That's something that you don't really do. The United States doesn't do that, and looks like Israel kind of stepped over that line. And for the last couple of weeks, there's been some warning that Iran was going to strike back. They vowed to strike back. The president of Iran went up on TV, the Ayatollah or whoever it is, the guy that's in charge, the religious leader that's in charge there, I'm not exactly sure his name, Ayatollah something or other, basically went on TV in Iran carrying an AK-47 saying that we are going to get revenge, essentially. And this was not a pansy little strike that didn't do any damage. Apparently it killed 7 members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, pretty high-ranking members. So it wasn't like something that just, oh, whatever, get over it, you're fine. It wasn't a symbolic strike. It actually did kill some Iranians and kill some, apparently from the reporting, some actually pretty important Iranians. And that's no bueno. That's not good. You can't expect to just bomb and kill citizens of another country, especially of their military, and expect that there's going to be no retaliation, which is what Israel did, Israel's the one that provoked this, right? Now, of course, many people are going to say before that there was a strike from Iran, and before that, the proxies were fighting for a long time, and you could trace it back, blah, 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 all the way to whatever event here or there, and it's always easy to blame the other side in this, but that is the most recent provocation came from Israel. That's what this strike here is in retaliation for. And it's pretty bad. So what happened exactly? Well, according to the news, while this stuff is happening, you got to remember there's the fog of war, right? And getting accurate news reports can be a little hard when stuff like this is going on. It's always best to just sort of take your time and read updates, stuff like that, before you make conclusions, right before you come to conclusions. But what it looks like is that somewhere around 100 different missiles and drones were launched from Iranian territory, and also some were launched from Lebanon by Iranian proxies. It looks like, miraculously, no one was killed in this strike, which is kind of amazing. So they fired over 100 different drones and rockets and missiles and things, and the Americans that are there managed to shoot down a bunch of them, and the Israelis managed to shoot down a bunch of them. They have one of the most advanced anti-missile systems in the entire world, the Iron Dome, which was actually pretty much paid for with American tax dollars. Amazingly, no one was killed. I read in the news that something like 31 different people were admitted for panic attacks or something like that, and then one person got injured from falling shrapnel after a rocket was shot down from the sky. I find that incredible. I found that absolutely incredible that no one actually died. It's kind of not believable to me, and it kind of makes me think that maybe Iran did this on purpose. Maybe they didn't want to kill anybody. Because here's the thing, folks, right? That's the tactic in order to get around these types of missile defense systems. The tactic is basically to kind of Leroy Jenkins it so that there's too many targets and you can't shoot them all down, and so something will get through. Which looks like that's what they were doing. They fired off 100 different projectiles, 100 different missiles and drones and stuff. And the fact that they shut down all of them, I just find that really hard to believe. So either some of them came down someplace and they're not telling us, or maybe they launched them at areas where there weren't a lot of people, or maybe they did something to make them easy to shoot down, like, which kind of gives me a little bit of hope, makes me think that, hey, maybe someone in Iran doesn't actually want there to be a war, and they were just doing this for political reasons. I don't know. It could very well be true that, yeah, just the anti-missile systems are just that advanced, that badass, that they're able to deflect 100 missiles. I mean, I don't know. That could be the case, too. I'm no expert here. I'm not a military expert in military hardware tactics or anything like that. It just sounds very fishy to me that no one was killed. And they're saying that no target of any worth was damaged even. They weren't even able to damage anything. You know what it sounds like to me? It sounds like, now if you remember right, this was actually during the Trump years. What happened is that they found evidence of chemical warfare in Syria, and that was one of the red lines or whatever that Trump said he was going to cross or something. And so then they did this strike on an airfield in Syria, and they did it in such a way that it didn't kill anyone and didn't damage anything. Long story short, it was like kind of like a symbolic attack in order to just save face, essentially, because they didn't want to like escalate the war. I don't know if that's the case here. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if this actually was the case, that they actually don't want to get into a war with Israel, and that they're just sort of doing this as a way to save face. Because if you also notice, Iran did not target any American assets. They didn't try to bomb any American bases or proxies or anything like that. And they're kind of telling us to stay out of it, because what they're afraid of is the United States declaring war on Iran, which I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Biden's going to get us into a war. No, I don't think. I think Biden would support Israel, but at least I hope so. I mean, I don't know. You never know. Biden might just be, I mean, he's old, but he's scrappy. And who knows? Maybe he might get us into a fucking war. If he does, that's it. That's the end of Biden, by the way. If Biden actually puts troops on the ground in the Middle East and gets us into a war there, that's the end of Biden. He loses the election. Just, that's it. He's gone. He's already basically in for the fight of his life because of all the shit that's going down over there. And if he just doesn't, if he doesn't have the good sense to keep the United States out of the war, then that's it. You can kiss a second Biden administration goodbye. It's Trump's going to win, and basically the country's fucked. Because I don't know if you guys understand this, but if Donald Trump was in charge right now, we would be involved. There would be American boots on the ground. I don't think you guys understand this. You know, a lot of people are out there, especially Trump supporters and conservatives and shit like that, saying that, oh yeah, back in, 2019, we had peace in the Middle East, and then Biden gets in charge and all the shit hits the fan. It's like, no, that's not true at all. Netanyahu has been trying to get the United States into a war with Iran for a long time. There's been this proxy war between Iran and Israel going back decades. Decades and decades and decades. They even bombed them back in the 80s and stuff, because they're like, oh, they're developing nuclear weapons, that kind of thing, right? Donald Trump would not keep us out of war. Let's just remind everybody what Donald Trump actually did when he was in power there. Trump tore up the nuclear deal that we had with Iran. That was one of Barack Obama's crowning achievements, was getting that nuclear deal signed, that Iran agreed to no longer develop nuclear weapons. That was the entire impetus, by the way, behind Israel wanting a war with Iran. Is that they're going to have nuclear weapons, we can't trust them. That's the excuse, by the way. The real reason is because they want to basically become a regional power. So he's been trying to get us to invade Iran for a long time. And Obama put the kibosh on that. No nuclear weapons, no reason to invade. And Donald Trump tore that up. And he tore that up partially from the influence of conservative pundits here in the United States who have never met a war they didn't like, but also partially at the behest of Netanyahu. That's why. It got torn up, so Iran said, okay, well, now they're going to start enriching uranium again. He took a perfectly good deal and threw it in the trash. You hear lots of rumors, like maybe he did it because Obama was the one that got that and he wanted to basically ruin Obama's legacy. Who knows? Who knows what the real reason was? But the end result is that he took a perfectly good deal that would have kept us out of a war, and he threw it in the trash and fucked it all up. And now we're dealing with the consequences of that. So that's the first thing, right? Trump also moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, which really pissed off the Palestinians. That was something that they didn't want. Remember, I mean, yes, maybe we were always on Israel's side in the past and stuff like that, but that was one of those negotiating points that they often fight over when it comes to, negotiating for a two-state solution. The Palestinians want control of Jerusalem and the Israelis want control of Jerusalem, and right now they kind of split it in half. And that's always been one of those things that whenever they start talking in peace talks and stuff, that's one of the sticking points. And by moving the American embassy over to Jerusalem, it basically gives a giant middle finger to the Palestinians. What really gave a giant middle finger to the Palestinians, though, were the Abraham Accords. So what exactly were the Abraham Accords? They were a series of peace deals, essentially, that Trump brokered between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, and then also Bahrain. And the thing is that up until this point, getting peace with Palestine was sort of like a bargaining chip. And this is like prior presidential administrations here in this country. The Obama people and even before that. They kind of made this contingent on Israel improving the lives and basically getting a two-state solution going for Palestine. And Trump didn't do that. Trump moved forward with negotiations without that. Got these things signed, and it just gave a giant foot in the ass to the Palestinians saying, yeah, you don't matter. That pissed a lot of people off. It basically came down to kind of like backstabbing the Palestinians there. And I've heard more than one commentary saying that that was one of the things that sort of contributed to October 7th. The October 7th attack was the fact that they kind of got screwed when it came to the Abraham Accords. And that's one of the reasons why they decided to, violence must be the answer. Because negotiating doesn't seem to be fucking working, right? Because the Trump people basically left them all hanging out to dry. So that's a big deal there. Let's also not forget that Donald Trump assassinated a top Iranian general back in 2018, I think it was. That was the assassination of a guy named Qasem Soleimani, and he was an Iranian major general. And this guy wasn't just some peon coffee boy or something like that. Apparently this guy was the second in command, like the second most powerful person in Iran. Donald Trump had this guy assassinated. It's sort of like if the Iranians would have assassinated the vice president or assassinated the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, something like that. That's kind of what this guy was. That was a giant fucking deal. Jesus fucking Christ. And the thing is, Iran, did they strike back at us? No. To their credit. Why? Because they don't want to start a war. It's incredibly patient and, and don't get me wrong, it's not like the Iranians just sat there and took it. No, they've been fighting back through proxies. That's what they do. So, proxies like the Houthis and various aligned groups in Syria and that type of thing. Right? Terrorist groups, that kind of thing. See, that's the thing. The reason why they assassinated this guy, Soleimani, is because the State Department designated him a terrorist. And it's like, dude, yeah, but you can't be assassinating the top generals of other countries like that and not expecting there to be some kind of response. So far, Iran has been very, very astute when dealing with the United States. They've never struck back at us directly. And even this time when they launched all these missiles and stuff at Israel, they still didn't target the United States. They clearly do not want to get a war started with the United States because they know they would lose. They know they would lose, but would they go down, would it be like Iraq where we just roll in and just take over and then there's like a 20-year insurgency or whatever? Probably. But Iran also has the capability to fight back. They can seriously do damage, not just to Israel, but to our interests in the region as well. mining the Persian Gulf and stuff like that. They could do some serious damage. And plus, this also could be the spark that ignites World War III. Iran is also a Russian proxy. I could definitely see a world where hostilities break out and the Russians take Iran's side. Will there ever be direct confrontation? I don't know. But it's never a good thing when there's war and there's two superpowers supplying weapons to both sides of the war. So it's pretty bad stuff. This is a thing that's been going on for a few years now, this proxy war between Iran and Israel. This is not the first strike in this. It's literally the past decade or so. There's been dozens and dozens of incidents, most of them having to do through proxies, either in Syria or something like that. So the actual direct strike from in between Israel and Iran have been few and far between, but they have happened. There's an entire Wikipedia page that basically gives the history of the proxy war between Israel and Iran there, which is definitely worth checking out. Anybody who's looking to get some historical background about what's going on over there and why it never fucking ends. So, not good, folks. Not a good thing. I mean, I'm not too worried personally of Biden getting us into a war, but you never know what's going to happen. It could very well calm down after this, for all we know. Apparently, there was communications from the Iranians that this is it, and they're not going to strike again unless the Israelis further the violence. That was basically the message from Iran, saying, okay, we've taken revenge for your strike against our ambassador and the murder of our 7, military men. Which apparently these 7 guys who were part of the Iranian Guard or whatever, Islamic Revolutionary Guard, that's what they call it. Apparently the 7 people that were killed in that strike were pretty important. So yeah, they couldn't let that one go unanswered. But apparently they've said this is it, and if Israel doesn't strike back, then we'll consider the matter over. Is Israel going to strike back? Of course they fucking are. Of course they are, in one way or another. Maybe they might do it not immediately. I mean, let's not forget they still have all of their military resources tied up in Gaza right now. Maybe this might have a good thing. Maybe this might pull out some of those resources and stop some of the murder that's going on there. We really can't say what's going to happen. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. But it's likely that it escalates. So let's keep that in mind. And I hope Biden has the good sense to keep us out of it. There were a couple of reactions that I wanted to show you guys, just to kind of tie it into my usual shtick. Let's look at a few reactions from some of our favorite Twitter assholes here. This is N Wokeness. And you notice here, N Wokeness is like, oh, Middle East 2020. And then Middle East 2024. Footage of the missiles being shot down. These are all the missiles being fired over Israel, and then you can see the Iron Dome is blowing them up. And then you look at, 2020, and it's like, we're signing a peace accords. Remember, these are the Abraham Accords that they're signing right here. That's what this picture is of. The Abraham Accords that completely screwed the Palestinians and set the stage for what's going on right now. Let's not forget Donald Trump is not blameless in this. And Wokeness, of course, is not the only guy who thinks this. This seems to be the talking point coming from the Trump people nowadays. Here's Donald Trump Jr. Remember when they said Trump would get us into a full-blown war with Iran? Times like these should make us all realize how lucky we are to have Trump, his strength, and his resolve. Fuck you, Donald Trump Jr. Fuck you. Okay. I mean, and then there's all these memes are popping up already of all these people who are just like, people who don't. It's just funny how conservatives just have, like, no memory at all. Just basically react to the moment in order to convince people that they actually have solutions when they don't have solutions. It really is my belief that if Donald Trump was in charge right now, we would have boots on the ground over there. We really would. Our support of bombing the Palestinians would not have changed. In fact, Donald Trump would support that even more, because Donald Trump doesn't give a flying fuck about the Palestinians. He doesn't really give a shit about peace. Not really. Donald Trump cares about making money, and he cares about making money for himself. And he cares about basically making money for Putin for some fucking reason. He doesn't actually give a shit about peace. No, he doesn't. The kind of peace Donald Trump wants is where the Palestinians are completely subjugated and defeated and destroyed and expelled from the country. That's what he considers fucking peace. So let's just remember that, right? And it's not just Donald Trump. It's all of the Republicans as well. Every single one of them. You know, Lindsey Graham flew over to meet with Netanyahu once all this shit happens, right? The Israeli lobby here, what do they call it? Fucking AIPAC or whatever the fuck they're called. Like, they have the Republican Party by the balls. Don't have any kind of notion that if they were in charge, things would be going any better. No, they'd be a lot fucking worse. So, what do I think we should do? I mean, myself, I'm complaining a lot and stuff like that, but do I have any solutions? I don't know. I think we should leave and not support Israel. I think we should, at the very least, not give Israel any money. I understand why we do support Israel over there, because there's international agreements and treaties and lots of other reasons. And the main reason being that they're a proxy against Russia. That's the real reason why we support Israel. And I think that the way that we can change this is through the ballot box. I don't think that protesting does anything when it comes to this kind of thing. You can go out there and you can hold a sign all you want. And you can go on the White House lawn and you can call Joe Biden a murderer. And you can do all this stuff. You can protest until you're blue in the face. That's not going to change jack shit. What changes things, what changes policy in this country is voting. You vote for someone who's going to actually do what you want, and then shit changes, and that's how it's going to be. Now, I realize it's not that easy. I also realize that even if we voted for somebody like Bernie Sanders, for example, there would still be support of Israel. But would we be so fast to give them weapons when they start bombing Gaza into the Stone Age and committing genocide? I don't think so. If we had progressive leadership in charge, I think this shit would have been over a long time ago. If we had someone like Bernie Sanders in charge, or even Elizabeth Warren. You know, Elizabeth Warren is very milquetoast, kind of wishy-washy, pseudo kind of fucking liberal, pseudo-progressive. Even somebody like her, I think, would probably stand up better to Netanyahu than Biden does. So that's what you got to do. If you really want, because this is what's going to happen, right? The far left, bless their hearts, are going to say all these things, and they're going to go out and protest, and they're going to go hold signs, and they're going to do marches for solidarity. They're going to have, they're going to pressure people to do, to make statements, and, will you support and blah, 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 and they're going to block traffic. They're going to glue themselves to the floor, that kind of shit. And you know what's going to change? Absolutely fucking nothing. You know why? Because politicians don't give a shit about any of those things. Politicians don't care about protesting. They seriously don't. They don't even give a shit if you get violent and you start rioting and stuff. They don't care about that either. That just makes you look bad. That's another thing that the left doesn't seem to understand in this country. So they go, oh yeah, we got some real change, after 2020 and 2021 with Black Lives Matter. There are certain leftists out there, anarchists, those types, who actually do think violence solves problems politically. And they couldn't be further from the fucking truth. No. Getting violent doesn't change anything. It makes you look bad. It turns people against you. It makes you look bad. Turns people against you, and your change never comes. And that's why we haven't seen any actual sufficient structural changes since 2020 in regards to Black Lives Matter. How many actual police forces around the country have been disbanded or defunded, or have had funding actually changed in such a way to where they're doing things like where police aren't doing wellness checks and stuff like that? Armed police doing wellness checks where they don't need to be. That kind of thing. No. Very few. Very few. Has the stem of police shootings actually stopped? No, it hasn't. Not really. It has not. Okay, police blow people away today just like they did back in 2020, just like they did in 2019 and 2018. It happens all the goddamn time. It didn't change anything. Those places where policies changed, people got out there and they voted. And that's what made it fucking change. And that's what has to change this time. And what the choice we have now is that we can stop this from getting worse. You know, you stop the fascists from taking over, and then you improve the country. That's what we've got going on right now. Okay, we've got basically a doddering old man who has politics from 40 years ago. And then we have an outright fucking red hat wearing fascist who wants to take over the goddamn country for his own ends, turn it into his own personal piggy bank, and expel everyone who isn't fucking white. That's what we have going on right now. That's the choice that we have. And if you don't want to vote to change anything, okay, be my fucking guest. But watch what happens. If you think that protesting is going to stop anything, let's say Trump becomes president, you think protesting is going to stop anything that he does? No. Do you think protesting is going to change his attitude to the Middle East? Do you think if Trump becomes president, because the war will still be going on, probably by the end of this year, do you think that getting out into the streets and protesting isn't going to do jack shit to change Trump's mind as far as supporting Israel and sending them troops and money and bombs and shit like that, keeping American troops off the ground? Do you think that's going to make any goddamn difference to him at all? Fuck no, it's not. A lot of people on the left don't like hearing that. And I'm sorry. Go be an anarchist, be a socialist and an anarchist and all that other shit all you want. Doesn't change the fact that if you don't get involved in the political process, then change doesn't happen. You have to get involved, one way or another. And standing around holding a sign, doing a sit-in, all this other shit, going on a march and making a speech doesn't change anything. It doesn't make anyone's lives better. It doesn't help anyone in Palestine. No, it doesn't make any kind of change at all. Politicians, unless you vote for them, they don't listen to you. And if you never vote, and they know you never vote, and they know that anything they say will never get you to actually go out and support them, then they're not going to actually listen to you when you talk. Are they my constituents? No. Well, then fuck them. That's the attitude. Try sending an email to any given congressperson. The first question they ask is, where do you live? What district do you live in? And if you don't live in that district, you know what they say? Sorry, you don't live in my district, and you can't even send them a goddamn email. Not through their own websites or whatever. Because they're not interested in you if you're not one of their constituents. If you don't vote for them, they don't give a fuck about you. All right? Like it or not, for better or worse, that's the system we have. That's what we're dealing with. That's the United States. Okay? It sucks, yes. You don't get everything that you fucking want immediately. You have to compromise on things. But that's the system we have. So anyway, went off on a little bit of a tangent there. Here's hoping that shit doesn't escalate in the Middle East and that we don't get ourselves into yet another war. Seems like we just got finished with the last two wars, doesn't it? Seems like we finally, after 20 years, got all the troops out. Even though we still have bases and shit around the region, it finally seems like the fighting ended. And then right when it's like, okay, we've got peace now, shit just hits the fan. Can't we just fucking get it right over there? I don't know. I think we should just leave. I think that's my solution. If I woke up tomorrow and they fucking made me, king of the fucking country or whatever, if I got to be president, I think that's what I would do. I'd be like, all right, we're out of here. Fuck you guys. We don't need the oil. Fuck the oil. Everybody buy an electric car. I'm done with it. But yeah, there's probably a reason why people like me will never be allowed to be in charge. Hello folks, if you like what I do and you want to support the channel, please consider buying something from my Etsy shop, supporting me on Patreon, liking and subscribing, and checking me out across my social media links listed below. Thank you all so much, and see you next time.